welcome everybody. My name is Manaswita, and thank you all for joining in today. Just a couple of announcements before we get started. If you have missed the first part of this workshop, we do have the YouTube link available on our website, which is focusaphasia.com. And if you need a letter of attendance for today, please email Dr. Brielle Stark. Her email is bcstark@iu.edu. Great. And so I am very pleased and excited to welcome back Dr. Jessica Richardson, who's at the University of New Mexico, and Dr. Sarah Grace Dalton, who's at Marquette University. I think both of them gave us a fantastic introduction to main concept analysis a couple of weeks ago. And so today we're going to dive deeper into it and learn more about the analysis. So this is going to be a very fun and interactive event. So we're looking forward to learning more on this topic. So I will let the speakers take it from here and get started. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Manaswita. Jessica, do you want to say hello to everybody and then I'll jump in?
Yeah, Sarah Grace is gonna take most of the mic from the beginning. So hi, I'm Jessica, and I'm just putting something in the chat right now. This is the link to the MCA training folder. So you will need this for today and forevermore. Make sure that you're online with that throughout. It has the living document that Sarah Grace will be navigating through today, and then important links and documents for other activities for today, but also for your successful MCA life in the future. So handing over to Sarah Grace, and let's jump right in because I know time is going to fly and we're going to run out of time.
All right, well, so it's wonderful to have all of you with us today. Let me change my view over so I can see some of y'all's faces. So what we're going to do is walk through this enhanced main concept manual, spending a particular amount of time on the scoring rules that were developed by Nicholas and Brookshire, and also, talking through examples of each of those rules and how they are applied appropriately. So I am going to share my screen here. And we'll get started. All right, can everybody see this okay? All right, I'm seeing some head nods, yes. So I'll start up at the top, just really briefly show you. We have our lovely table of contents. These links are all active, so you can navigate directly to the place that you want to be in the manual. So we just included the broken window picture stimulus. We have the main concept checklist, and then these Nicholas and Brookshire coding rules with our examples that we've built out. So we'll start at the checklist. And here you see this is what was published in our original manuscript on main concepts that we did. And for each of the main concepts, we have kind of a canonical form that was used most frequently. And then underneath are, for each essential element, some of the alternatives that were used. So this hopefully will help with scoring, as you're listening to or reading a discourse sample, you can look at these alternatives to assist in scoring. And then we also include some notes that might also help. So for example, this first main concept of the boy was outside was often spoken in combination with the second main concept of the boy was playing soccer. So something like the boy was kicking the ball in the yard, or the boy was playing soccer outside. And so for a statement like this, an individual would receive full credit for both main concept 1 and main concept 2. And then we also provide some notes about things that do not count or wouldn't receive full credit for a main concept. And so I'll just draw your attention here to main concept 2. The main concept is the boy was playing soccer. And utterances such as he has a ball or he has a soccer ball, where it's communicating possession of the ball but not any action with the ball, we would not give full credit for this main concept. Jessica, did you want to jump in there and add anything else?
Yeah, and we'll bring this up again when we talk about one of the rules, because as we point out here on the comment, the completeness rule about statements containing some of the essential information. Some of this information may kind of partially apply towards the main concept if certain concepts haven't been addressed or that word isn't used for another concept. So we'll cover this again in that rule. But I just wanted to highlight it here because, we made a point to point it out in the checklists, but there is an exception to the rule when you look at the Nicholas and Berkshire rules, and we wanted to point it out in both places. So we'll circle around to this again.
Okay. And so you can see here that we've highlighted this in each of the main concepts where we have a note of, utterances that are close to but did not count for full credit on a main concept. All right. Any questions up to now?
I have a quick comment is we definitely learned from our first round of checklists.
Yes.
So the first paper was Cinderella, PBJ, and Broken Window. And we really tried harder to provide even more information and more, alternative wording for the second paper, which was the Refused Umbrella and the Cat in the Tree or the Cat Rescue. So we definitely learned, about that gap that was in the literature in terms of how much help we were providing. And as you'll see in the documents that we have, these living documents, they're always being built with more examples. And so we hope that if you are, doing main concepts, using them, that again, you'll continue to reference these because all of these examples are constantly updated.
Yes. Okay, so let's dive into our coding rules. That's where we're going to spend the bulk of our time. So the Nicholas and Berkshire coding rules start with rules about determining the accuracy of main concepts. So we'll focus first on accuracy. And their first rule is about the wording of an utterance. And the rule is that essential information in a main concept does not have to be exactly the same as that listed for the main concept, but the general meaning has to be the same. And so, as we just discussed, something like the boy has the ball really has a different meaning than the boy is kicking the ball or playing soccer with the ball. And so that's why, you could say the boy is playing soccer, he's kicking the ball, and those all count, those both would count towards one main concept, but the boy has the ball doesn't. So that's also why we provide these alternative and additional commonly used terms for each of the essential elements. So if we take a look at our broken window example, for main concept number 4, the man is sitting. The essential elements are the man and is sitting. Things that were frequently said along with it but did not reach our criteria to be included as essential are things like in a chair or inside the house. And so statements like the father is relaxing in his recliner, the father is sitting in the living room, the man is resting, even he is just sitting there. All of these would be alternative, accurate wordings for main concept 4 for broken window. And really quickly, Dr. Richardson is going to highlight some additional examples that we have for other stimuli.
Yes, and this is really just to kind of show you that these examples exist. So, and I just want to back up real quick. These rules that we're talking about, we did not change them in any way from the Nicholas and Berkshire appendix. And all we did was we pulled it into this document. We added a little structure to their cookie theft examples. And then for this broken window training manual, we added broken window examples as well. In this other document that Sarah Grace has just navigated to, it will eventually be appended to the training manual. And you can see that there are Cinderella examples related to the accuracy of the wording as well. So I'm not going to go through them, but these are real questions that have been asked of us by other researchers and other clinicians. And we try to, kind of categorize it under which Nicholas and Berkshire rule, and then answer it so that you can see the thought process that goes behind trying to solve these or to answer these questions. Back to you, Sarah Grace.
Okay. And so that is something that is continually growing, and as individuals email with more questions, the manual again will get updated with our responses. So it's certainly a living and growing thing. So the next Nicholas and Berkshire rule is about the grammatical form and word order of an utterance. And so the rule is that essential information does not have to be spoken in standard grammatical form or in standard word order, as long as the deviations would not lead to miscomprehension of the essential meaning of the main concept. And so the cookie theft example is directly from Nicholas and Berkshire. We'll focus here on the broken window example. So for main concept 6 of the ball breaks a lamp, the following statements would all be considered accurate. So ball break lamps, ball lamp broken, lamp is broken, ball boom. And the reason is because we have in each of these statements all 3 of the essential elements, and the meaning of the statement is preserved. So it still very clearly corresponds to the idea of main concept 6. The next rule is for articulation. And so this rule states that essential words do not have to be correctly articulated in order to be considered accurate, as long as they would be intelligible to a listener as the target word in the context of what the speaker is saying. And Nicholas and Berkshire also said that you should assume that the listener has seen the stimulus so that they know, what the pictures are showing. So for broken window, some examples that we have run into for main concept 6, the ball breaks the lamp. If an individual said, knocked over a lap in the man's house after going through the window, that context along with the stimulus makes it pretty clear that lap is an errored production of lamp. For main concept 3, the ball breaks the window. An example would be, and window woke by ball. So again, broke is very close to the target utterance. And finally, for the boy was playing soccer, the boy belayed soccer, again, is very close to the target of playing. And in that context would be very clear what the intent was. The next rule is for inaccurate, non-essential words, inaccurate main concepts. And so here we've highlighted, we did add this word, we did add non-essential here into this rule. It's the same, it is in the spirit of the rule, we just are clarifying that this is only for non-essential information. So Nicholas and Berkshire said that if the essential information in a main concept is accurate, but inaccurate words are also included in the concept, we should consider the main concept to be accurate, unless the inaccurate words alter some essential information. And so they provided, again, cookie theft examples, and for broken window, if we look at the main concept, the man is sitting in a chair or the man is sitting in the house, something like the man is sitting reading a newspaper would still be considered accurate, even though when you look at the stimulus, the man is not holding anything, he's not looking at anything, because reading a newspaper is not essential. The only 2 essential elements are the man and sitting. And then again, similarly, the man sits sofa would also be considered accurate still, because sofa is not an essential element. Okay. The next rule is effects of statement form on essential information. And this is where the form in which a speaker chooses to state a main concept affects what information is considered essential. This is not something that we've ever actually run into in the broken window story, but we do have an example from another story that we'll highlight here.
Yes, and there wasn't even one that was provided for cookie theft, as you can see. The example that they gave was for one of their procedural discourse tasks. So with the refused umbrella, and we actually included this in the refused umbrella checklist in the original published checklist, but for main concept 2, the mother says you need to take the umbrella. Take this umbrella would be considered accurate because commands in English allow for the subject to be dropped. So that's one of the very few or only examples that we really had of this rule. This is not a rule that we visit very often. Sarah Grace did bring up in one of our discussions, which was, well, maybe we're not using it right. So we looked really hard at, a lot of different examples, and this is just something that doesn't come up as often as the others.
Yes, and the example that was provided by Nicholas and Brookshire for this rule was actually a procedure where the number of arguments in the verb changed based on, and so different amounts of information were required based on the verb that was used. But that,
yeah, I think it was put versus run, right?
Yes. Okay. So inaccurate pronoun reference, I'm going to review briefly here, but later on when we get into some of the completeness rules, Dr. Richardson is going to dive into a little bit more detail, because pronoun reference we have found to be challenging and are probably one of the places where we find the most disagreements when it comes to scoring. So according to Nicholas and Brookshire, if a referent is inaccurate, but a pronoun that refers to it is accurate, you should consider that statement with the pronoun accurate. Okay, so if the original noun is wrong, but the pronoun use later is correct, then they would still receive credit for being accurate. So for main concept 7 in the broken window, the man picks up the ball. If the following statement was made, that the woman picks up the ball and then he looks out the window, the first statement would be inaccurate because it's not a woman in the picture. But the second statement would be considered accurate because the pronoun he is correctly referring to a male. All right, and then the last of our rules for accuracy is restatement of essential information. And this is also one that can be easily overlooked, but if essential information is stated one way and then is restated either in the same utterance or later in the discourse sample, you should only score the final version that is spoken. And that's even if the later utterance would receive a lower score, unfortunately. So for the broken window example, for main concept 2, the boy was playing soccer. If an individual said, the boy is playing baseball, no soccer, then that statement would be considered accurate because the last piece, the restatement, is accurate. For an example, another example would be the boy was kicking a soccer ball and the ball goes way up high, so the boy was playing baseball. This individual has restated main concept 2 as so the boy was playing baseball, which is not correct. And so this would be scored as inaccurate, even though originally the utterance was correct. And I think Jessica was also going to highlight another example here.
Yeah, it's just something that we see with the refused umbrella, so I thought it was worthy of mention here. And again, this is in the other living document that will be appended to the manual. In refused umbrella, we often have people who may have more cognitive involvement. So sometimes this is with my left hemisphere stroke, with aphasia, but sometimes with right hemisphere or with a, cog-com after TBI. And when they're doing the refused umbrella, they don't always catch that the mother has offered the umbrella and the boy has refused it. But as they go on through the panels, some of them, not all of them, may catch that, and then they want to go back and correct themselves. And so this actually makes us refer to this rule quite a bit, because we do have to accept their revised statements. But I just do have a note that this may mean that their main concepts, looks pretty good because they revised it and they corrected it, but you'll still want to make a notation, clinically, that, something was going on, so that, they did not catch this, and it may warrant further assessment of cognitive abilities or inference abilities. So I just wanted to point that out here for this kind of special case. We see it a lot in the refused umbrella.
Okay, thank you. So those were the rules for scoring accuracy that are provided by Nicholas and Brookshire. So now we're going to look over the rules that are used to help us determine completeness of the main concepts. And so the first one is kind of the no-brainer, missing essential information. If only some of the essential information for a main concept is mentioned, then it should be considered incomplete. So for example, for main concept 2, the boy was playing soccer. If an individual said the boy is playing or the boy soccer ball, they would receive credit for accuracy, but not for completeness, because they are missing one of the essential elements in each of those examples. For statements, the next rule is statements containing some of the essential information. And this is what we were referring to when we were at the main concept checklist up above. So if a statement that is not listed as a main concept contains some of the essential information for a main concept, you should give credit for that statement, but consider the main concept incomplete. So typically this is when a new character is being introduced or some essential information is being stated for the first time. So for example, in the broken window for main concept 4, the man is sitting, the ball hit a man. If a man had not been introduced previously in the story, an utterance like the ball hit a man would be given partial credit for main concept 4, because it's the first time that they've introduced the character a man. For main concept 2, the boy was playing soccer, something like it is a ball would also get partial credit for main concept 2, as long as a ball had not been produced before. And so this was a new introduction of this kind of key component of the story. Okay.
So yeah, I'll kind of elaborate on this as well. This is probably our least favorite rule, and it is probably the one, especially early on, but still today, that gives us the most trouble in terms of reliability. And part of this too is, Nicholas and Brookshire are careful to say that it establishes a character and it cannot have been mentioned previously. It doesn't necessarily say, well, what if it's used again? Like if they do talk about the man later, and so it is introduced, then do you give them credit for that first, mention or, establishing of that character? So that's one of the questions that comes up in some of the conversations. The other questions that come up are just, sometimes it's just, it's easy to miss because, this wasn't this concept. And so you just kind of get rid of that utterance from the patient's transcript. You just kind of ignore it. And you have to kind of force yourself to go back and say, okay, well, of these of these statements that they said, of these utterances, did any of them serve to establish in any way? I don't always love this one either, because I feel like it can potentially inflate their score. So if you have someone who maybe is severely non-fluent and is doing what we often see, which is just kind of naming things, that, they may actually hit on a lot of characters or events and establishing them. And they may hit, on one essential element out of, for example, the 3 that are required for that concept, and they get an accurate incomplete for that, just for, naming something that's in the picture. And so this is definitely the one that that I have the most difficult time with. The example that I do want to give here, Sarah Grace already gave the ones from Cookie Theft and Broken Window. One of the more common ones that we see is with Cinderella too. And that is when they make some mention of the dad. And, the dad doesn't show up except for in the very beginning of our main concept checklist. And sometimes they may say that he remarried, but sometimes they say she lost her dad or her dad died. And they don't mention the other stuff that is, that we mentioned in our main concept checklist. But according to this rule that is highlighted here, it's establishing a character, it's a main character that is important to the story, and it wasn't used for anything else, then this would actually be credited towards that main concept 1 of dad remarried a woman. And then here's another example of the king announces there is going to be a ball, which is concept 8, or main concept 17, Cinderella went to the ball in the coach. These are the 2 concepts in the Cinderella checklist that have the word ball. So if they just say something, and again, this is a more of a non-fluent example here, but we see it a lot. But if they just say, then ball, this does establish a major element of the story, and kind of depending upon where they're telling it, you could credit it towards main concept 8 or main concept 17. So as you're doing main concepts, you need to be aware of this. That's why we have this highlighted as a hot spot that needs your attention. We try to give examples of this, and we also just let you know, just very transparently, that this is probably one of our most problematic and least favorite rules.
Yes, agreed. Okay, so just a few more rules for completeness. So the next rule is for the use of non-specific words. So according to Nicholas and Brookshire, if non-specific words are spoken in the place of essential information, you should consider the main concept incomplete. And the biggest issue that we see as we're training new students or new lab members is that they want to count these things as inaccurate. But this rule says very clearly and specifically that it should be incomplete, not inaccurate. So the broken window is actually probably one of the hardest to give examples of this for, because it's a very, very concrete stimulus set. And so there's not a lot of lack of specificity. But for example, for main concept 4, where the man is sitting, if they said someone is in the house, that would be considered incomplete, because there is a pretty clear information about who this is. He would be appropriate, but probably not someone. And then a better example, or I think a little bit clearer example of this, is actually for the cat rescue or cat in the tree stimulus item. So for main concept 8, our healthy control sample said someone called the fire department. And this is not an action that's pictured in the stimulus. This is something that individuals add because they have to provide a reason for the fire department showing up. And since there isn't any depiction of the fire department being called, there is legitimate uncertainty about who is making this phone call. And so a reference to any person would be appropriate for this main concept, and the use of non-specific words like someone or somebody would also be appropriate, because it's, legitimately we don't know who. And in the cat rescue checklist, we do provide several examples. So Things that we saw were the neighbor, the lady next door, the mom that was in the house. Sometimes even people said, you know, the dad or the little girl called the fire department. So there are a lot of options for who is calling the fire department, but, you know, legitimate uncertainty surrounding that. Okay. So this is where we're going to spend a little bit of time on the pronoun referent issue. So let me introduce the rule very briefly, and then Jessica will give some more examples and background. So for pronoun reference, Nicholas and Brookshire have stated that if the referent for a pronoun is ambiguous, we should consider the first main concept that contains that ambiguous pronoun to be incomplete. But then after that, it would be given full credit and would be considered complete. They also say that you should not consider a main concept incomplete if there is a missing referent, but the context is clear or unambiguous. And so for broken window, a statement like he is sitting inside, even if they haven't said the man, there's only one person sitting inside. And so this is a pretty unambiguous and contextually clear statement, just given that picture stimulus. But now I think that we're going to pull up the incorrect pronoun reference and kind of compare them side by side. So let me actually unshare my screen and then I'll reshare.
Yeah, so I asked Sarah Grace to pull these up side by side because this is definitely what I do and what she does too when we're actually scoring these things, because we have a lot of questions about pronouns. It's a very frequent area of disagreement. It's definitely something where, you know, when we're doing point by point or utterance by utterance reliability, where somehow, somewhere reference are causing a little problem with reliability. It comes down to, you know, there's a section under the accuracy for pronouns and there's a section under completeness for pronouns. And so when you're making these decisions about the pronouns, you're having to decide, okay, well, is this an accuracy issue or is this a completeness issue? Now, this may not seem like that big of a deal. And, you know, in truth, when we're looking at the Richardson and Dalton scoring, if you're just looking to get a score, a main concept composite score, it doesn't make that much of a difference in terms of the numbers, because an accurate incomplete or an AI is 2 points, and an inaccurate complete or an IC is also 2 points. So in terms of like the number of points that are given to it, it's not that big of a deal for our scoring system. If we're looking at reliability of codes, then it shows up because someone is coding something as an AI and something is coding something as an IC. And then I'll visit again why this might matter when you're looking at norms. For the Kong scoring system, this becomes even more important if you're having this disagreement or if you're not sure how to resolve this, because an AI for the Kong is 2 points. So an AI is accurate, incomplete, whereas an IC, which is an inaccurate, complete, that's 1 point. And so if you're not making this decision correctly about the pronouns, then it can cause a difference in the actual points that are assigned if you're looking at the main concept composite score. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. As you know, oftentimes when I am making any decision, let me revise that. Every time I am making any decision about pronouns, I just pull these sections up side by side so I can have all the information I need in front of me to make the right decision about whether or not this is an accuracy issue or whether it's a completeness issue. And so I just want to encourage you to do the same. So you can see here, we have the pronoun reference that Sarah Grace is showing on the left, which is more of a completeness issue. And then on the right is an inaccurate or an accuracy issue. And so I encourage you to take this approach. If you can stay, Sarah Grace, Dr. Dalton, in the rules for a moment, because there are some other examples there that I just want to show you again that they exist. And again, this is a living document for the completeness. So yes, thank you so much. Scroll on down. Yeah. So for up a little bit more. Yeah. So for here, the pronoun reference for completeness, and you can see this cookie theft and the broken window that were just shown to you, but you can also see Cinderella examples. And again, these were real questions that were asked and answered. There are even a couple of places where I even indicate in the document that, you know, this was our decision. I'm trying to find a good example of that. There's one or two on there that, you know, this is our decision, but we still don't quite agree about it. Or like, we're not super happy about this decision. I'll try to find one where I say that. I thought I had commented it out, but I didn't. So I won't waste your time here. But even if we've had just like a really hard time, we've really struggled to figure out what the answer is for something, we try to say that here too. Like, this is what we would do. This is, you know, where we think it fits, but there was also a little disagreement, or, you know, it could be argued that X, Y, Z. And so we try to keep that narrative and that transparency in this document as well for all of you to enjoy. I want to show you something really quickly. So I'm wondering, Sarah Grace, could you close the MCA Enhanced and just look at the rules and maybe make it a little bigger for them? And this again will be appended to the manual that you do have access to. And as you can see, these are other examples. We've answered them. They just need to be filed under the right accuracy or completeness rule. And I don't know why we were answering in all caps. I guess we were very enthusiastic about answering questions about Cinderella that day.
Got very excited.
Very excited. And then you can also see there's some in gray that are to be answered. So things that are kind of still outstanding and we need to visit. And, you know, if you send us a question or someone sends us a question, this is the first place that it goes, is in this to be answered section. And then what you also have in the currently existing manual, but I'll go ahead and point it out, is that there's just a couple of notes, and some of these we've already said, but it's worth saying again. You know, it does not, the main concepts do not have to be spoken in the same order that they're shown on the main concept list. And here's an example of how they can be spoken out of order. Now there is additional work, and hopefully we get the opportunity to present on it in the future. And my lovely colleague is here, actually, Catherine Greenslade, on sequencing. And there are other folks who have worked on sequencing as well. You know, so hopefully we'll have more work with this so that you can pay special attention to sequencing and get another measure that is helpful for you. And again, we've said it before, but it bears repeating. If a main concept is spoken several times, you always score the final version. Whether or not that's fair, or whether or not, you know, you think it is fair to your patient, you know, for reliability and for consistency and to be able to use the norms that are provided, that is the scoring rule for that. Again, bears repeating. Essential elements for main concepts can be produced across multiple utterances, and the verb tense should not impact the code received, and this relates to that, you know, grammatical form.